Shall we review?
Let's review
a game called Barrage. Let me give you the stats on Barrage. Barrage came out this year. It was Kickstarter was in it for last year. It just delivered in the past month or so. It plays 1 to 4 players. It has a current BGG weight of 3.91. The designers are Tommaso Battista, and this is his first design. And the co-designer is Simone Luciani, who I am now saying, this is a big deal, guys, what I'm about to say.
I know what you're about to say.
Simone Luciani is now my favorite board game designer.
Well,
I'm going to tell you what Simone Luciani has designed. Zolkin, Voyages of Marco Polo, Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, and now I just had to buy the only game I don't own of his, which is Newton, which I'm excited to try.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a good list.
Zolkin, Marco Polo, Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo, and Barrage. That's nuts.
It's insane.
That's like Spielberg. Like those are all my favorite games.
Isn't
now.
there like a collective of these guys that are kind of tag teaming
There's
different
an
games?
Italian. I won't say the word mafia. There is an
You just
Italian.
did, yeah.
There is an Italian contingent of designers who make amazing medium heavy board games.
Yeah.
Like literally heavy medium weight board games, and they're all fantastic. This Barrage is the heaviest game of this designer's of this whole scene's designs yet that I've seen. The artist is Antonio De Luca, and the publisher is Cranio Creations. Now, before we get into the review, we need to discuss some of, and I hate to use the word controversy. I'm going to give you 30 seconds of this because I don't care enough. The components are not up to snuff for a $100 game. Okay,
This was a $100 game.
This was a $100 game with shipping. The components are lackluster. I had to do a lot of work to get them good. My copy is fine. Plays 100% fine. My box is split at all 4 corners. You will see tape on all 4 corners of my box. When the wheels were delivered, you use these wheels to track the resources moving in the game. They were all warped beyond comprehension. I took them apart. I took all the pieces of the wheels apart, and I left them underneath heavy, heavy dictionaries for 48 hours. That solved them. They're fine. I put them back together. They're flat. They're perfect. I had one of my player boards completely split and come apart and had to glue it back together. All the corners of every piece of cardboard look smushed and weird. You'll see wrinkles on the corners of almost every single piece of cardboard in the game. The components are not up to snuff for what you paid. That being said, the game is absolutely magnificent, and I could care less about the components right now. Now, I will also say this. The amount of negativity and toxicity that I saw on Board Game Geek and the Kickstarter regarding this shocked me. I just don't like the amount of like hate and vitriol and nastiness that people came out with. I just have a hard time believing that these are like Zolkin fans. Like when I think of people who play like Zolkin and Marco Polo, those are pretty complicated, awesome games. I just feel like you're going to find like pretty level-headed, rational people. I just can't imagine that like Zolkin fans, like the people were like giving death threats and like it was like it felt like I was on 4chan or something.
You can also look at the ratings.
Yeah,
and,
no,
and
the
the
people,
ratings
they
tend
bombed
to
it.
be 8, 9, 10, or 1.
Well, because then you get into this stupid BGG war of of people doing 1s and then all these people doing 10s to counteract the 1s, and it just becomes
Well,
this
the
nightmare.
10s might actually be legit.
Most of them were, no, you'll see, like it was a whole thing. That people were bombing them with 10s and bombing them with 1s.
Right.
It just got nasty, and I ended up really siding with the publisher on this. They did their best. They made some mistakes. I don't fault them, and they did their best. They made mistakes. They've said we made mistakes. They're going to replace all the wheels. They're sending everybody new wheels.
Wow.
They're replacing the water drops that they sent, which are a joke and are impossible to pick up. And I've never used them, and I bought my own water drops.
Oh, I didn't realize that we were playing with
Yeah, no, the ones they
water.
gave were literally pieces. They're little
Like crystal, right?
Yeah, but they're ridiculous. You can't pick them up. You literally can't pick them up.
I mean, they kind of look pretty, and I think that was the idea.
Yes. Like they did their best. Like they're human beings. This is not a major corporation. This is not like, Google putting out a board game. This is like a bunch of people who started a board game company. Like people need to realize that this is a niche hobby
People. It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a number of people who've made board games, published their own board games. It's a lot of work.
If the game sucked, I'd be like, I want my money back because it's not nice and the game sucks. It doesn't suck. Let's get into the game. That's all I'm saying on the components. Get over it.
Yeah, I will say
the game is worth the effort it takes to fix the components.
First time I played it, and I didn't know anything about the history of this, but I was like, whoa, I love this game. And I was like, what's the BGG rating?
Yeah.
And it was like 6.5. I was like, what? I didn't know all the controversy. Apparently it rose from 5 point something. And now it's like a 7.5 or something. So it is starting to come around.
I rated it last night.
I think it's a 9 or a 10.
I'm with you. Let's get into the basics. Let me tell you a little bit about Barrage. The weakest part to me of this game is the theme. I think the theme is bizarre and totally pasted on. So I'm going to read you the theme of the game. In the dystopic 1930s, the Industrial Revolution pushed the exploitation of fossil-based fuel resources to the limit, and now the only thing powerful enough to quench the thirst for power of the massive machines and of the unstoppable engineering progress is the unlimited hydroelectric energy provided by the rivers. Now, let me just explain what that means. So this is a game where you are all fighting over waterways and rivers and basins of water in order to turn the water into hydroelectricity. Whoever
CEOs of international companies.
Right. So there's 4 countries in the game, not even companies, countries. There's USA.
International companies.
Right. USA, France, Italy, and Germany. Yeah. And you take on one of these asymmetrical companies and you try to make the most money
building dams, gathering machinery, and controlling patents.
Right, but then they've slapped on this very bizarre steampunk thing where like the characters have robot arms. Like, look, I actually don't mind it. Like, but it just feels there's no reason for it. Instead of just having cubes for your resources, there's little mechs. Which are very fiddly and hard to pick up.
I don't mind it.
I don't mind it. I just think it's...
I think it's a skin.
They didn't...
Clearly. But I don't mind it at all. I prefer looking at this style than maybe just what a bland...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they just didn't want... I think originally the game was probably just a game about... And also, I think if you're going to do a 1930s game set in the Swiss Alps where people are fighting over power, it's a little hard not to recognize that power is probably being used to fund the Nazis in World War II.
Right, so maybe that's what
alternate timeline.
I think
a good idea.
I honestly think that's exactly what they're like. Oh, we want to make a game about hydroelectricity in the 1930s. Oh, yeah, we have to make it sci-fi because otherwise Germany is going to be using that power for other things.
I'm of two minds here because I think the theme of water cascading down, the multi-level map with dams, power stations, conduits, love that theme. And I think that they felt like, oh, that's not sexy enough. Mm-hmm. So we got to dress it up in the steampunk thing. And the steampunk thing, to me, doesn't work. I also don't care at all. But they clearly felt like this is not, like they had to do something. It hadn't occurred to me about the Nazi thing.
Right. I think
that's interesting.
But it never occurs to me, the Nazi thing.
Jesse, do you want to just tell us what this game feels like? Tell us about how you play this game.
All right. Well, so you've got this board, which is like the Swiss Alps, and there's roughly 3 lanes. Well, it starts with kind of like 4. There's 4 sort of, water. Waterheads?
It's like frozen glaciers that are melted.
It's where the water starts before it pours down the mountain.
That flows into generally 3 lanes, okay? And then you've got 3 horizontal stages, which are these different elevations of the plains and then the hills and then the mountains, which dictate the cost of these buildings.
Right. It's more expensive to build something in the mountains than it is in the plains.
Right. And then throughout these regions, there's these 10 basins, which you're building, all these different structures. And so the 4 main structures are you've got the dams, which are going to stop a unit of water. Okay, you're going to block it
from flowing downhill.
Right. Water is actually a resource that you're tracking that's flowing down the river.
This is all about water. This is a brutal game about water, and it is a shared resource, and it is super scarce.
Yeah, you're fighting. It's a war for water.
Yeah. So you've got the base dams where you're going to block a unit of water. You can build elevated dams, 1 to 2 more, to block up to 3 units of water.
Right. The higher the dam, the more water it can hold.
Right. And then you've got these conduits, which are transferring the water to another basin, which is running through a power plant, which is turning that water into energy, which you're going to track at the top of the board, which is going to give you cash and victory points and allows you to turn in contracts.
So to me, if you're trying to visualize this game right now, and if you're familiar with Gaia Project or Terra Mystica, there's a couple things that are clearly inspired from that. So the first one is your player board, which is going to have all your buildings on it, right? And as you build the buildings, it unlocks more powers, just like in Terra Mystica or in Gaia Project. It also unlocks income. So if you build up a certain track of buildings, meaning if I build far on my dams, now I'll have more income every round. I'll get these resources, I'll get points, I'll get things like that. If you build your powerhouses all the way up to the 3rd powerhouse, it unlocks your asymmetrical superpower, just like building, the big university or whatever in Gaia Project will unlock your your civilization's big superpower as well. So it's very similar to that. The other similarity between Terra Mystica and Gaia Project is the round by round scoring. So every round, something new will be scored, just like Terra Mystica or Gaia Project. So things like 5 points for every base you have, 5 points for every conduit, things like that are going to be scored every round. But an interesting thing in this game is you are not eligible to score that unless you have produced a certain amount of energy every round, turned enough water into energy. And it gets harder and harder as the rounds go on. So that's a very interesting part of the game as well to me.
And so, about that water sort of that loop of you're going to build your dams and the things and the conduit and the power plant and energy, and then the water. Well, where does the water go? Then this is the game. The water is either going to be wasted, it's going to run off the board, or maybe you were savvy enough to run the water, to set up another dam and whole system that you could channel it right back into your own system and run it next round.
So that's the thing too. When water is used, it doesn't disappear. It flows past your thing and then could be picked up by somebody else.
Or
water
you could flow it right into your opponent.
Yeah.
And this is the dance of this game is you got a system going, and do your opponent has a better system. Do you go block him? Or do you try and benefit from what he's creating? And this is constantly happening, this little chess game happening with 4 people.
Yep.
I love it. It's just a great dance.
Some other elements in the game you want to talk about, Trey?
This is a worker placement game.
Thank you very much.
So you've got the map, which Jesse just described. Half the game is actually like how you take your actions in the game. You start out with 12 engineers, and unlike a lot of other games, this is finite.
That's it. There's no family growth.
There's no family growth. You're not expanding that. That said, there is kind of something like that in that so the actions are going to be divided between, there's probably correct terms of this, but there's ones you take on your own board versus the ones that you're competing for in the central board.
The building of buildings is all done by putting workers on your own board. You're not fighting for that.
And in fact, it's not so the thing that's, I think, super unique about this game is the way they use a rondel.
Yep.
And tell
us about the rondel.
The construction wheel.
Yep.
The construction wheel, because in most games, like say you're playing Agricola or most other worker placement games, and you want to take a certain action, I'm going to build a dam. And so you'll go to the build a dam spot or something. In this game, it's on your own board. And rather than, okay, I'm building a room in Agricola, I'm going to spend a certain amount of wood and a certain amount of reed, and then I spend it and it goes away. In this game, you're not actually tracking like resources that you spend and that it goes away. It's more that you have 2 different kinds of units, cement mixers and
basically the brown workers will build your base dams.
Mechs. They look like mechs.
Yeah, the little machinery resource
you're
workers.
allocating another kind of workers on your own board. So like when I'm building a dam, that's going to cost
I believe
me,
they're excavators and cement mixers.
Depending on where, as Jesse was talking about, like there's the plains, there's the hills and the mountains. If I'm building a dam in the plains region, that's going to cost me 3 excavators. But rather than spend them, they're going to go on my wheel. So like the wheel is an expression of time. So I build the dam, and now those excavators aren't going to come back to me until I've taken 6 actions.
But the building is instantly built. You don't have to wait for the building.
Instantly built, but like you've done a series of actions now that go into this wheel, and your workers are kind of like captured until they're freed from the wheel. And this is kind of an expression of time, and you have to manipulate your own rondel.
You can do what now?
Sorry. The wheel.
I'm really good at this.
The wheel is the whole game to me. The wheel is the thing that you are wrestling with this whole game. And I've never seen this in a game before where resources are not spent. When I build something, I don't spend them. I just lose them for a long time. And then how long it is sort of dependent on how much money I want to spend to speed it up, or how well I built my engine to speed through it.
Right. So you can turn that wheel by taking another build action. Yeah. So that'll rotate another 6th. Or you can go to the market and take one of those spots where you could rotate it.
You could spend $5 to rotate it 3 times.
You could, 1 to 3 times. Or contracts will also, help you turn that wheel.
So let's talk about contracts. Somebody tell me about contracts in this game.
Contracts are a huge part of this game. I don't know. I think it's a really good strategy. I mean, basically, you go and pick up contracts, and they're basically giving you bonus moves. When you turn in energy, you've got to...
When you generate energy. Did we explain exactly how that works?
It moves through the conduit.
When it goes through the power plant,
the water.
Say you've got 3 water in your
we didn't say
three-struck
that, yeah.
dam. You run it through a 3-power conduit that's going to generate 9 energy.
Right, 3 times 3.
There can be other modifiers,
Right.
and then so we'll look at this and say, okay, this production of water generated 11 energy. We're going to track that on the board, and then Jesse would be able to fulfill a contract of up to 11 points that you had acquired through
Right.
another worker
And you can only
placement
complete
action.
one, no matter how many contracts you
Yeah, unless
have.
you have a
or-
special power. But yeah,
Right.
you can do one contract, and that contract will give you cash, victory points, water, more workers, anything like that. And so the contracts are kind of like bonus moves when you create energy, when you generate energy.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I think if you ever produce water and you don't complete a contract,
You're not doing it
you've,
right.
You've
Yeah.
lost.
And
Yeah.
especially if it's on one of the round bonuses, it's all the more reason to be going heavy on
Yeah.
contracts.
This is totally a game of action efficiency. And if
Yep.
you are not getting everything out of every action, you are not competitive.
Yeah.
It is a brutal game. So I'm gonna give a couple comparisons. And let's talk about what this game feels like. To me, this feels like Age of Steam to me, in the sense that it gives me the experience of being absolutely and utterly miserable the entire game, but in the best possible way.
It's stressful,
It
but
is-
it's lovely.
It is painful. The game should be called "Well, I've lost," because that's what you say every action. I mean, like every single moment of this game, I'm going, "Well, I completely blew the whole game," and you're always feeling like you are under the gun, that you are way behind. Every water is the most valuable thing in the world. You are fighting over it. You're looking at spots on the board and going, my whole game is over if somebody builds a dam there before I do. I've built. I mean, this game is about. Much like Age of Steam, feels like Age of Steam to me is if there are 3 players who have played the game one time, and 1 player who has never played it. The 3 players who have played it only one time will absolutely destroy the new player.
Right.
Now, if you've played it 10 times.
Yeah.
And you've got somebody who's never played it, it's going to be the most miserable experience that 4th player has ever had in their entire life. This is a game there is no luck in this game.
Well, the luck is in
Very
what other
little.
people decide to do, when they weren't paying attention.
But this is a game of skill in which the better you are, you're just going to get trounced in this game. So this is not a fun game to play with new players.
It's a heavy game. There's a lot going on. I think we've identified this game like it's really good for our group, but it will drive some people crazy. If you have low patience for analysis paralysis, this game will generate tons of it.
That
because
being
your
said-
decision space can be pretty large.
That being said,
Especially the new expansion that we were just playing with. That was the first time.
with 4 players who have all played this game before, 3 hours.
Yeah.
Not longer, not 4, not 5. I mean, there's Tricarion. Tricarion's a 4 to 5 hour game.
Yeah,
Tricarion is a long game. Like there are even Age of Steam. Age of Steam could be a 4-hour game. I mean, there are games of this heaviness to me are usually longer than 3 hours. So this is actually a really positive. And I actually checked. I timed it last night. I mean, we literally got 4-player game with full expansion, completely done in 3 hours.
Did that include setup?
No, setup was probably another 20 minutes.
Setup's serious.
Setup is no joke in this game. But from the time we started playing, from the time we started picking roles and everything, I mean, including that, exactly 3 hours, which is, to me, very short for a game of this complexity. You can do it in any game night, which is the games that are this heavy. 18xx. This is as heavy as 18xx to me, and as punishing. But 18xx can take 6 to 7 hours. This is 3 hours. I don't even with some AP. This is 3 hours.
Yeah.
This game, because you have 12 different engineers in order to take your actions, and sometimes you're spending 1, sometimes you're spending 3 in order to take your actions, though. But your turns are relatively quick. Like, we're going to play 5 rounds.
Yeah.
And you're going to take 7 or 8 turns each round. And so it can often move really quickly. You are never just sitting there waiting to go. On other people's turns, I find myself being really involved with trying to figure out what I'm going to do next.
Yep.
It's almost, I start lining up my moves almost like as a computer program because you need to be thinking about, I have these 12 actions. What do I want to do?
Yeah.
Ideally, what
Parsing out
am I
different
going to
workers.
do when my plan gets screwed when Jesse takes this, this thing before me?
And I will.
Yeah, because you can't just play this head down. You do
No.
need
Right.
you do need to obstruct
A
other
lot of
people's
interaction.
games. A lot of interactions. There is a big amount of "I will drink your milkshake."
Yeah.
in this
This game could
Where
also be called "I Will Drink Your Milkshake." I mean,
where somebody's got this big move. I can't wait to move that water in front of that neutral dam, and they miscalculate slightly, and then you just stole it all, and they're
that's a good point you brought up. About I'm not looking at my phone while playing this game in between my turns.
Yeah,
I am
absolutely
not.
not.
I am like fully invested, and that's one of the interesting. I mean, like by the time it gets to my turn, I'm often like, oh, I wish you guys had taken longer because I need some more time to figure out this nightmare I've created for myself.
Well, there's a thing you want to do, and then very often, again, like in a great competitive worker placement game, it is almost like it's more likely that the exact thing you want to do
Always.
is going to be taken by the
Always.
player who goes right
Yeah.
in front of you, and then you have to switch to plan D at that point. That's happening all the time.
I will say, I mean, this game is very punitive, and I have had moves happen to me very early on where I was like, I think this game is over, and I think this person won. Like when we played last, I was like, my friend Ben came in. I had this great setup, man. I was going to work off 2 neutral dams, and it was sweet. And Ben came, and instead of taking a different dam or trying to block me up here or block another player or whatever, he put his power plant right next to mine, so we're feeding off of the same dam.
Yeah.
So now we are competing for that, and it's like
Yeah,
it's gonna be really hard to recover.
It's a
from
little,
this.
almost a bit of kingmaking, almost because now you two are fighting for maybe third and fourth, and everybody else gets to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Before we move into positives, let's go over a few negatives. There's a couple things. So first of all, not all powers are created equal in this game. I'm not of the belief that this is a well-balanced game right now. I think with the expansion, you're okay, but I think one of the 4 starting powers is just much weaker than the rest. And I think USA, which is the power wherein you get 1 power every time water naturally flows through your powerhouses, is almost useless. Now, so at the beginning of the game, you have 2 layers of asymmetry happening. You have your nation that you're choosing, your corporation, and your superpower doesn't get unlocked until you've built your 3rd powerhouse. So you don't even have
It may not.
It may
ever.
never, right? And with USA, there's no reason to because it's useless. You're just playing, Terrans. So if you once you get your 3rd powerhouse unlocked, your power happens. Now, usually the earliest that's going to happen is round 3, something like that, maybe round 4 even.
You could totally focus on it.
You
and
could race
get
it. You could race it. Yeah, but usually it's going to happen for most people around round 3 or round 4.
Yeah.
USA's superpower requires you to plan much of your strategy around that superpower. Everybody else's superpower naturally is going to benefit you by just playing the game. Everybody else just gets to do what they want to do normally, and when they unlock that superpower, they get something awesome. USA cannot play the normal game and then be rewarded for it. They have to play a different game to try to catch this water, and even then, the benefit, I think, at their best game is much less than the benefit of the other people who are just getting to do what they would normally do and get rewarded for it. I think USA is hard mode. I think if you had 3 new players and 1 experienced, give them USA, that might handicap them a little bit, might make the game a little bit fairer. I also just think you just don't use the power. So you're basically just playing a neutral corporation without a superpower. The expansion has a power that is good. That is, I think, Netherlands, which is totally, I think, equal to the others. If I was playing 4 players, I would just ditch USA and just play with those 4. And I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, this has been a topic on the forums. I'd like a few more. I'm
not saying it's done, but I'm pretty convinced.
A lot of people have called for kind of like the designer to just kind of say, hey, this is how I envision this working. Because right now, everybody's having trouble visualizing how that power is supposed to be as rewarding on anywhere the level of the other 3.
What's your thought? What do you think it would be? Like, what would be the best scenario in using that?
You'd have to maybe start putting your power stations higher up.
Yeah, just put them up.
The problem is, though, is that it's very rare power flows naturally. Water flows naturally.
So here's the better argument for why USA, we may not be appreciating how good USA is. Because every board is different, it isn't just the superpower you unlock, it's also what are the rewards you get when you, like when I get my second
the
dam.
unlocked incomes are different on every board. board.
And they're different on every board. And so I think, although nobody has actually said, yes, the USA unlocks in these other categories
Yeah.
are so great that it makes up for a lackluster
That's
superpower.
what I was wondering might be the answer, but I don't see it.
That would possibly be the answer because they are very
I'm
different.
curious. You got them right there. You should.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
I looked at them last night. I don't think they're much better than anybody else's. I don't
agree.
see that they're better. I mean, if they all gave you workers early or something, maybe, but they, I don't know. It doesn't seem insanely better to me.
That said, I was in second place, only off by 2 points.
But you also never use your power. You were playing neutral corporation with no power. You never.
And it also
unlocked
worked out. I went first, and the assistant.
You
'cause
probably would have won if you had somebody with an actual power.
who knows? And then the way the game works is at the beginning, an assistant gets paired up with the
Right.
nation.
So that
and
is the
then-
other level of asymmetry. And tell us about the assistants.
So the assistants have their own superpower, which is available right away. And so,
And how many are there in the? Do we have?
I'm looking here. We're playing with the expansion now, so it looks like we've got about 9 or 10
Right.
different.
So there's 10 different ones. At the beginning of the game, they get randomly paired up with the country. So every game, you're going to have a different, sort of like Scythe, you're going to have a different combination of your player board and then a joining power.
Yeah, and like Gaia Project, you're going to you're going to have a start player, and then people in reverse order are going to pick which nation they play with. An assistant will be matched up with that. They'll take an introductory contract. So in my case, yesterday, because I'm going first, I have no choice.
Yep.
I just get what's left. And so that was USA. And then my assistant, I think, was also what I would consider to be underpowered. And in fact, it was one that had no symmetry with my nation power.
It was the opposite. Yeah.
Either. So already on the forums, I think a lot of people are talking about house ruling USA. I think my suggestion was just like, let's play with all 5 in a 4-player game. And so that you can always just
Yeah. And one of the house rules I saw on BGG for that was, how about just one power every time it moves through a powerhouse, even if it's not naturally moving through it?
I haven't played the game enough
know.
to say what that is.
I don't know. Maybe that. I mean, it's still at most 20 power throughout the whole game. I don't know. I mean, there's not a ton of water moving
even
through
like
here.
energy is not created equal either. Like energy on the energy track that you are not using to fulfill contracts is not as valuable.
Right. Yeah. Just
So
getting it. Yeah. I mean,
it's not that.
Yeah.
And in fact, it can hurt you sometimes. Getting 1 power. Sometimes you'd rather have the 0 energy
Right.
and get the 3 money,
Totally.
especially early on in the game. So we're getting into the weeds. A
So,
little bit there.
so that's one negative for me is balance. The other negative is something I already brought, which is that this is not a fun game to play with people who haven't played before. At this point now, I've played it 6 times. I would not have fun playing it with a new player. I just wouldn't. It wouldn't be competitive. It wouldn't be fun. It would be a lot of king making involved in it. Whoever is, one person is going to benefit highly from that person's mistakes, and that's going to decide the game most likely. So much like playing Age of Steam, like it's not a game I want to play with new players because it's not going to be fun, and it's a lot of effort and work to not have necessarily a fun experience.
I'm going to take the other side a little bit just because, Jake is probably our least experienced gamer in our group, and he loves this game. Mm-hmm. And so...
Well, he's also played it like twice now, yeah.
He played it twice.
But he was also looking at his phone most of the game.
He was... What?
He was playing an app game on his phone, but
I didn't
most
realize.
of the game, and he wasn't really
he-
thinking about what he was
Okay,
doing.
he came in third. I think he felt like he was doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like there's some games like I like playing Ticket to Ride with family groups a lot of times because you can play that with a lot of mixed level skill players and kids, even if they're not playing in it for the win, they feel like I'm converting,
Yeah.
I'm laying rail, I'm converting things, I'm building my network. This is my network. It feels good. You have a presence on the board. Jake had a really intricate series of dams that was really rewarding, and it was just kind of like he was having trouble converting that to points.
Right.
But he still had awesome things to do.
Yeah.
And so I know he really enjoyed the game.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I didn't notice he was looking at his phone. So.
Negatives? Any other negatives, guys?
Well, the first couple times we played this game, I don't know if you were part of this conversation, Matt. We were wondering, is this unbalanced for 4 players versus 3? After
Good.
playing
I'm glad
more,
you brought that up.
Yeah, after playing more, I'm not sure, but let me just propose
tell me
this.
why. Yeah.
The setup is you're going to get 3 dams that one level, a 2 level, and a 3 level, and they're going to be placed at different elevations and different lanes.
Right.
Okay, and it's
Randomly set up, and they're
Right.
neutral dams. Nobody owns them.
So you got 4 players, and you got the first 3 players, which they're each probably going to pick the sweetest spot. And Trey's shaking his head. And actually, Trey, deviated from that. Did you go last when we played?
Third. You were
so
first
you
and Ben was
opted
last.
not to take a spot. Let me finish my first thought, and then I want to come back to that.
Sure.
Because I'm glad you did that. The first couple times we played this game, my first time, everybody took a spot, and then I had nowhere to go.
You need the quick water off the neutral dams.
So yeah.
This is the low-hanging fruit from the initial setup. Of
Early game energy.
And especially for my first game, I was like, well, I guess I've got to zag and invest in infrastructure, and I'm not going to get any energy, and we'll see how this goes. But I don't know. I thought, is it broken per se? And that was an early thing, and I'm starting to think no.
Yeah.
And then TREY, being in third position, chose specifically not to take one of those stations, and I don't think that what was remaining was as titillating as like my position. But you chose specifically I'm going to zag and I'm going to build this infrastructure. And I forget, what did you invest in first?
A power, a special action power.
Right.
To
So
spend 5 coins, and I got a special.
Yeah.
Because I played the game once before with a group on Tabletop Simulator who had played the game a lot, and I knew how powerful these kind of like special actions that you buy.
So when you build a building,
I think those are
expansion?
actually. No, that's
Or
part
is
of
it
the
basic
base
one?
game.
It adds a few more.
Every round, every turn, there will be 3 special actions that can be purchased that you then have as like a superpower as you go forward.
These are
in the
tiles
game.
that you are required to put into your wheel when you build a building. The ones you start with have no powers. You can buy ones that have special powers, and they're super powerful.
So in my mind, these are the occupations from Agricola.
This is action efficiency.
Yeah.
Right, and I think those should be highly competitively sought after. And so I think like your idea that there's some kind of auto moves at the beginning here is not the case at all.
It's starting to seem like the auto move is
might
taking
actually
the
be
best
grabbing
technology.
Well, and also in that first round, you were rewarded for taking those. You'll get a bonus if you can produce energy. The people who took those, because there was none left when I got around to buying them, but the 2 people, you and Ben, who bought those, all of them up, couldn't actually produce energy to get the bonus. But there was more incentive to get it in the first round, if you remember.
Yeah, I think in a worker placement game, it's just a question of like, are we actually having difficult decisions here, and there's not auto plays, and I'm not sure that there are auto plays in the game. You very often are having very difficult decisions about.
Well, I think there's 3 really interesting strategies in this game. I think there's an early game, a middle game, and a late game. And they're both really equal. I think there's a totally solid game where you are just crushing the early energy game, always at the front for the first 2 rounds, getting that 6 points and getting another 4 or 8 points off of the round scoring. It's scoring 30 points, but by the 3rd round. But you are not developing infrastructure. You are running power for the first couple rounds and getting the low hanging fruit and just winning that game. And then hopefully you've built up enough of a lead that during the next few rounds where you have to actually start building infrastructure, that lead is insurmountable by other people. Then there's a game where you just play a balanced game. Then you're going a little bit of early, but I'm also building infrastructure. Then there's forget the early game. I'm going to produce no power for the first 2 ages probably, but I'm going to have an insane late game. And I think those are all 3 completely valid strategies.
I will say this is a really interesting balance of strategy and tactics. It is really important to plan ahead in this game. You must strategize like turns down the road.
Yeah, this ain't checkers, it's chess.
And not just for yourself, you got to watch what other people are doing, turns down the road, and plan for that.
You're constantly racing.
But it's not just strategy. There's a lot of tactics involved. There's opportunities that comes up, and you've got to seize them. So it really is an interesting balance of those 2 dynamics.
Want to talk about the expansion?
Yeah. Somebody else tell us all about it.
Okay, so this is only my second play.
The game, the
third play.
Kickstarter game came with the expansion. That was part of the bundle I bought.
Oh, gotcha.
They'll be coming to retail, I believe, by the end of the year, and you'll have to buy the expansion separate.
So my first game was on Tabletop Simulator. It didn't have the expansion.
Yep.
It was an excellent game. The expansion makes it much better.
Yeah, I think this is a game I would never play without the expansion with.
Yeah, so it not only introduced a 5th nation, probably a couple of additional...
Which replaces a broken one in the core game.
But it also introduced kind of like 2 new sections of the board, one of which is that you can buy private buildings. So you can kind of purchase something that's going to give you a power, which you can take an action in the future. And These can be very expensive. They can give you endgame points, but the powers are also very good.
Yeah, they're better than any other spaces you could put your workers on.
So they're
the board.
very tempting, and you're always kind of wondering, can I possibly afford to buy into one of these private things?
They're
the way
big
it works
resource
is
dumps, though. Big resource
dumps. Everybody can own these things, and once you have them, you can kind of do the special power. Very cool. Then they do another thing, which are like off-site works or something.
Yeah, you're sending your workers away from the Swiss Alps.
So, and this is crazy because the way this works is you can, as opposed to your private wheel where you spend your workers and they kind of are tied up for a while before they come free again. This is, I'm going to spend my workers and they're going to go away forever.
Bye-bye.
But the benefit I get is
massive.
Significant.
Yeah.
But am I screwing my ongoing engine for short-term gain? And
they're great in the late game.
They're really great in the late game, but I also found playing the game yesterday is there were times where I got stuck.
Yeah.
And it was worthwhile to me to kind of destroy some of my future
How many did you take throughout the game?
3 or 4?
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, how many workers do you think you got? I mean, were you out of workers by the end of the game?
I had gone through about half of them, especially. But you get late in the game, you just start to burn them because there's less that they can.
Yeah, you built all the expensive things.
So it added a whole nother layer to the game of I can destroy my engine for short-term gain, but sometimes that short-term gain is completely worth it.
Yeah,
and it's a difficult decision, but it's often the right time, and it helped loosen things up.
Yeah.
For me, because I think you can get stuck in this game where all of my workers are committed to my production wheel and I can't even afford to turn it, and I'm kind of done.
Right. In your special power, your nation, I believe,
when we played,
was conducive to the expansion, I believe, right?
Absolutely.
Because you didn't have to lose any workers?
That was my special power, is that when I take one of these offsite works, rather than spending them and then burning them, they would actually be committed to my wheel, and then I would get them back later. That seemed like a very powerful assistant power.
It was an assistant power.
It was an assistant power. It's not a national power.
Right.
It's an assistant power. So, go ahead. And I would say anybody listening in who's going to get this, you want to play with the expansion.
I think it's worth buying along with the core game for 2 reasons.
Would we recommend, your first game, should you play without the expansion?
No, I'd play with... I don't think it complicates it very much. I mean, it's another 2 minutes of rules explanation on top. I mean, this is a 1 hour teach.
It's a lot.
And I think the expansion is a 1 hour, 2 minute teach. So I don't think there's a big difference. I mean, the spaces on the expansion are no more complicated than any other space on the board. There's just 2 more of them now. I think this is a 1 hour teach.
It does also open up the options, though, in
yeah. Totally.
And I think almost it's not an exponential way, but kind of.
I think it actually makes the game easier too. It's a little more. I think there's more options. So there's more ways to get out of stuck situations,
which loosens things up
which could actually help with a new player. I mean, I think without those places, sometimes you're just I don't have anything to do this round. And
there's more opportunity to combo. You can build a kind of a combo engine out of those those private buildings.
I would consider it the real game, the full game.
Okay, so for me, this is clearly the best game of the year.
Yeah, let's get into our positive thoughts. So Trey, tell us.
Yeah, I mean,
we clearly all like it, but let's discuss how much we like it.
This goes in my top 10 immediately
of all time.
Yep.
Fart in a tree. That's what I say when I can't curse.
I mean, I don't disagree. I haven't fully thought this through, and I want to sleep on it. But
the only other
think
time
about this
I've
game.
heard you say that, Trey, is the Gallerist. When we played it, and you went after one game, you went top 10 of all time. It's the only other time I've ever seen you play it. Say that. Sorry, Jesse, cut you off.
No. I don't disagree with it. I have to analyze it a little more. What my top 10 is now, but I could see this up there. I love it.
It's
it's my kind of game. It's worker placement. It's engine-y, tough decisions, a lot of interaction, kind of like good conflict. I'm not destroying your armies, but I am drinking your milkshake.
Yeah.
That we're constant. There's just so many things to consider in no different ways that we're interacting both on the board and competing over the action spaces.
Yeah.
So this is definitely my kind of game. For the people who have liked Agricola, probably played Terraforming Mars, and have played them a lot, this will be one that I think will become part of your collection.
I
played a lot.
I've played 2 new games to me this year that have blown my mind, that made me go, wow, I've never played this, and I've been playing board games a long time. The first was Carry On, which is not a new game this year, and now this one. Those are the 2 games I played this year that went, oh, this is a new step in design.
Yeah.
This is a growth beyond what I had thought was possible in design right now.
Yeah.
I'll give you one quick story to tell you how I feel about it. So last night, when we were deciding what to play, I almost, as we were setting this up, I almost said, I don't think I have the energy for this. I was exhausted after a long work week, and I almost wanted to pull an audible. There was a moment where I was like, this takes too much energy out of me. And what it did, though, we started playing, and it energized me. It is an exhausting game. It is mentally exhausting, but it is so interesting.
Yeah.
It lit my brain up, and it actually woke me up, and I was fully engaged. And I wasn't brain dead exhausted from the week anymore. I was fully awake and loving every second. I mean, I don't, the game we played last night, I enjoyed so much. It would be in like my top 10 gaming experiences I've had, which is crazy. Like we just had a random Friday night game. I almost cursed again. I was so happy playing the game the whole time. I came in third, but I was like, I played my best game I've ever played of it. We were all within a few points of each other at the end, and I felt a victory because I've been fighting against this game for the last couple weeks. Yeah. I feel like I'm not good at it. And last night, I grokked it. It clicked for me, and I had such an exhilarating experience playing it.
I think just immediately setting up the board, you start to look at opportunities, and then you're putting out the round bonuses, and you go, okay, and then you look at the contracts, and you start to go down a path, and you start to make connections, and this game is constantly doing that with putting out new things, and not too many things, but just enough. When you go, oh, okay, and then they're doing this, okay, and there's a constant boom, 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 boom. It's just a great ride.
Yeah, this game has me like thinking about it in the shower the way that few games do it. It sticks with you. It was also like just what you were saying. Like I was the first player in the game last night, and like we had a whole setup, and I did just say like I'm gonna need 5 minutes here.
Oh yeah, no, we all. This is like you need to like nobody look at me, nobody talk to me. I need to just take in this board for
There's
5
a
minutes.
lot to take in right at the beginning of kind of like, okay, what am I gonna try to do? Because you're making big decisions right off the bat. Like you said, where you place that first power station could be everything.
Or not place it and decide to go, different path.
This is a big game. This is a heavy game. But if you have a group, and I think if you listen to this podcast, you probably like at least medium weight games. If you like heavy games, this is as good as the genre offers, in my opinion. This is as good as the medium offers in terms of heavy games. I'm not ready to say it's in my top 10 yet, but it's 100% in my top 15 or 20. It's probably in my top 10. I don't know. It takes me a little while to get there, but
sure.
It's mind blowing. It really is. And I know we do a lot
you're
of positive.
excited to play this again.
Totally. And that's another thing.
I kind of want to play it right now.
That's another thing. Like, this is not a solvable game to me, and this is not what I love about Kickstarter is that we have an abundance of riches here, an embarrassment of riches. We have so many powers and so many different ways the game will be variable every time, and so many different. To me, there's enough variance in this game where it won't feel like the same game ever in 2 games. We do a lot of positive reviews on this podcast because we're enthusiastic about it, but I think this is. Of all the reviews we've done on this podcast so far, this is the first game that I've reviewed that just, to me, is this is an A+.
And I particularly wanted to review this one because of the low ratings on BGG and that whole controversy.
Yeah,
it's like people need to know about this game. This is a really, really great game.
No, this is an important game. This is a game of the year. This deserves to be in the top 50 on BGG. This is from a design like when we look at Simone Luciani's designs, and I'm not to undo what Tommaso Battista did because I don't necessarily know how much each of them did on this, but I only know Simone Luciani's other work. Zolkin, Voyages of Marco Polo, Grand Austria Hotel, and Lorenzo are all top 100 games on BGG. I think they're all top 50 games on BGG actually. Is this his best game?
It is for me, but that's a great list. So
it's an insane list. It's like it's like looking at like Spielberg's 1980s movies and trying to figure out which is the best.
For me, Lorenzo and Marco Polo and Zolkin are all top 20 games. So
yeah, it's nuts.
I haven't played Zolkin, but of the games I played, and I love like Lorenzo would have been my favorite of that group. But I think now Barrage.
This is also a huge. I mean, this is twice as heavy as those games. I mean, it depends if you're playing with the expansion or not. But Zolkin is the heaviest he had before. Lorenzo, to me, is the perfect middleweight game. To me, it's the perfection of medium weight Euros.
It's much more accessible.
Yeah. Marco Polo is a little bit heavier, not quite at Zolkin. To me, this is a couple steps ahead of anything else in terms of weight and heaviness and calm. I mean, this is, like I said before, this is a 1 hour teach. Think about that. A 1 hour teach. That's a long teach. 1 hour teach. Look, we have a very special group, but we play a lot of heavy games. So I can teach this to us in 30 minutes, but I think a 30-minute teach in our group is an hour long.
I also
teach
think that this is
your
it's
average
fun
group.
to teach, to learn, and to understand what's happening.
If
What
you-
is
you have to love
difficult,
heavy
I think,
games.
what I think is difficult is the understanding the implications of any of these interactions, where you're placing dams in the conduits and how it's going to be transferring energy. You don't understand that until you play the game.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. This you can't play this game until you've played this game.
I know.
Absolutely.
I know also what Matt is saying. Like, I mean, when you first look at this map, so people, if you guys are listening to the podcast, and you can just go and look at the map at BGG, it's busy.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying it's bad design, but there's a lot to take in, and I don't feel like I have grokked this board at all.
Yeah.
Like, there's still so much to kind of like discover in the board. There's just a lot going on there. Just trying to figure out like where am I supposed to place a dam in this giant crazy map of interconnected lines and waterways.
If there's another expansion for this game, all it needs is just a new board, and that will change the entire game. Just a new map.
I'd like to see more nations.
Sure, of
Yeah.
course.
Like
But
in
I
the
mean-
same way that you like
but
play
a
Gaia
new
Project,
map-
you'd love to have some more.
A new map would change the entire game.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just switch the ways.
So it's super expandable
Yeah.
already. Like we know, like this will lend itself, even if it is just more maps, more nation
It
powers,
could be.
more
I mean,
assistance.
this is a system like Age of Steam. They could just have new maps. I mean, it's systemable.
But the hardest thing would be adding more nations and assistance.
balance issues,
This is the
yeah.
balancing
Yeah,
of
of
that.
course.
As much as we'd love to all that, just
all right,
just guys.
we've waxed poetic long enough, and we're going long.